Hi again, and welcome to Pearl Magazine. For generations, deaf people have used sign language to communicate with each other and the wider world. But when deaf children try to learn to use their voices to speak, they often lag behind their peers in literacy and social development. But new approaches are offering these children new hope. As Tina Jiang reports, there's growing support for adopting a dual sign and spoken language system to help deaf children maximize their potential. Here now are some of their stories.
Good morning, class. Okay, everyone please be seated.
This morning, students at this primary school in To Kwa Wan are taking an English class.
A businesswoman.
As usual, two teachers are co-teaching today. Students can learn both spoken and sign language at the same time. The class has 25 students, smaller than normal, to make it easier to teach the dual language class. Among the students, 5 are deaf. Max is one of them.
Hi, 我喺各自啦，所以咪係咁。今年係12歲，讀5年班，興趣係羽毛球同埋游泳。
Max was born deaf. He can speak but prefers using sign language.
I will focus more on the sign language teacher because it's the best way for me to understand everything. If there's no sign support at all, I would not understand the speaking. Our classmates are always happy playing together. If there's some lectures that I don't understand, I will ask my classmates and they will always explain it to me.
Most of Max's classmates who can hear know sign language as well.
I started learning sign language when I joined the class in Primary 1. It was hard at first. I couldn't remember it. But after some practice, it's not that difficult.
Eason is one of the 20 students who can hear normally. He's been studying with deaf classmates for 5 years.
I treat them like normal people and talk to them with sign. They're not that different. They can do most things.
Most of the students from this class have trained to be bilingual in both sign and spoken language.
My sign language is not really good, but it's enough to talk about simple topics with my deaf classmates. They're really good at observing. At first, they needed our help, but later on, they could handle everything. They even helped me too. For instance, I forgot to add a date or a first job to my homework. They helped remind me.
One of Chloe's best friends from the class is Zoe, who's deaf.
I'm working well with the hearing students, and my classmates, some of them can sign, even when they are hearing, but they can still sign. And also, when some of the deaf students do not know sign language or do not understand the hearing students, I can help them so we can play together.
The primary school introduced the new teaching model in 2016. It incorporates both sign and spoken language into the class. It actually followed a secondary school that launched the model in 2013. In addition to the two schools, one kindergarten is using the model too. Some other countries and regions have also experimented with it in places like Singapore, Macau, and mainland China. Michelle Lam has taught this class for the past 5 years.
They have great improvement with social skills and also the knowledge. Of course, some deaf student is not good enough to listen, so they rely on sign language. But I think they are improving. They have no discrimination. They are good friends.
The teacher was a little worried before joining the class because she didn't know how to sign. But now she knows the basics.
Once a week, we will sit together and talk about the content, like 30 to 40 minutes. how we are going to teach these contents and that. She will show me the concept and I will show her the sign language.
Anita says education for deaf students has come a long way. It was very different in the old days.
They now got chances to choose. They can watch sign language or spoken language at their will. And if they have questions, they can ask me and I can always explain to them in sign languages. And I think they learn a lot. I was in deaf schools, but sign languages were forbidden. And in classrooms, we were only allowed to speak. And whenever we enter the classroom, we'll have to guess what the teacher was speaking to us. And we really learned a little. I think I only understand maybe 30 or 40% of the content. For the rest, I just gave up.
Back in the old days, Anita says she and her classmates could only communicate secretly in sign language.
Whenever we were caught secretly using sign language, we will be punished. Sometimes when we were standing there, we still wanted to sign, but then the teachers just forced us to use our hands to hold the ears so that we cannot use the hand.
Anita says misconceptions about sign language have existed for a long time. In 1880, the Milan International Congress for the Education of the Deaf suggested a ban on sign language in deaf education. It was said sign would deprive a student of speech. Since then, this oral approach has dominated deaf education around the world, including Hong Kong.
It was recently until 2010 when they started to think, okay, sign language is important for deaf education, but that was too late for me, at least.
In the 1960s, the Hong Kong government started to promote integrated education, encouraging children with hearing impairments to study in mainstream schools. As a result, the number of schools for the deaf declined sharply, from 13 at its peak in 1973 to just 1 today.
Now people realize that segregation is not the solution to special education. I think this is the right way to go. But then the question is, how are you going to cushion the students when they are in such a context?
Professor Gladys Tang has been researching the linguistics of sign language for 3 decades. She says that not many teachers in mainstream schools are familiar with deaf students and their needs.
Normally, they would say, okay, we just place them in front in the classroom, and so they will have more contact with the teacher's eyesight and so on, and lip reading, and they will be able to get through. But it doesn't work all the time.
Professor Tang heard from many deaf students and their parents that the children didn't benefit from this kind of classroom placement.
It's the parents who will, go through the homework with them, teach them once again, because only the parents know what their language is. They lag behind. They couldn't actually get good results in public examination.
According to a recent study by Professor Tang's team, nearly half of integrated deaf students in mainstream primary schools have suffered severe deficits in language development. In 2014, government research also showed that less than 10% of deaf people took post-secondary education. Almost half of local deaf people are underemployed in low-paying jobs.
Another issue is peer support. A lot of deaf students just feel that they don't have peer support at all, and they are all alone all the time. I really wish to see close partnership between the deaf students and their hearing peers in the mainstream context.
To overcome the barrier, Professor Tang and her team decided to introduce sign language into the local mainstream schools, so both hearing and deaf students can be bilingual in sign and spoken language. All students can participate actively in class.
This is a great opportunity for those who have hearing problems to grow up and study like a normal students.
Slavomir Kalis supervises a local primary and secondary school that have adopted the model of sign and spoken education. He believes that hearing students can also benefit from the program.
I see the transformation of the mentality. They know that they have some students with some difficulties and they have to find a way to communicate and support and help. From that early age, they learn how to implement what we teaching them to love God, to love your neighbor.
Parents also support the idea.
We present the whole program to the prospective Primary 1 parents, and we explain all the things. And also we send out the form for them to choose whether they would like to take the co-teach class. Each year is around 80% parents. They would like their kids to join the Class B.
Wang Chi-chung has been a principal for 20 years. He appreciates the friendships between his deaf and hearing students.
Some of the hearing students, they have very good academic results. They can go to the elite class, but they prefer to stay with the deaf students because they have very, very good friendship.
The principal says many parents understand and appreciate the friendship among the students.
And I don't really want him to be with deaf students only, because eventually he will have to go into the society. He will have to be involved in the hearing world. So I really hope that he could have the experience of interacting with hearing children. So I think this project is a great idea. They have hearing and deaf kids together, and so he can know both sides, and he doesn't need to be, hiding himself. He can openly talk with his friends.
When Chloe was promoted to second grade, I did think about letting her join the elite class. But a teacher, Miss Lan, told me that my daughter liked sign language a lot. She was also very determined to stay. She's happy, so I'll support, definitely.
His friends are all in that class, so he didn't want to leave. He's familiar with the teachers and classmates. I think he'll benefit from the safe and sound environment.
Chloe and Eason are top students, but now prefer to stay with their deaf classmates after studying in a special class for smart kids. Both teachers and parents agree that good education is more than just getting good grades.
Coming up, after more than a year with little or no work, singers and musicians are back in the spotlight. We'll bring you a noteworthy report next. Stay with us. Welcome back to Pearl Magazine. With social distancing restrictions being eased and operating hours returning to normal, Hong Kong's musicians are finally heading back to the stage to play live gigs at clubs and restaurants. Tonight, a look at what their long-awaited comeback means for them and for the nightlife industry.
On June 22nd this year, the government finally allowed musicians to play in small venues around the city after more than a year of stop-start restrictions, which saw many only playing for a few weeks in the whole of 2020. Since then, venues have been rushing to fill dates with bands and their fans. Chris B., an events organizer and musician, has put together an event this evening featuring 6 bands for a 17th anniversary concert at a club in Lang Kwai Fong.
It's 17 years. There's a lot of people with great memories of playing at the underground, or, I think some people even, launched their careers at the underground. So it's really, It'd be nice to see new friends and old friends, for sure.
It's great. I haven't seen you for ages, and I've never seen you looking like that, Keith.
While she and her fellow musicians are happy about the lowering of restrictions, they're cautious, knowing it could end any time.
They are seeing some lives, which is nice. It's been longer than 3 weeks, thank God, because the last 2 times was 3 weeks of live music. stop, 3 weeks of live music stop, right, over a year. So they're all very busy, which is great. We want them to be busier, and we want to keep the opportunities for them, yeah, for sure.
The memory of 2020 is still fresh for many.
Oh, man, it was depressing because there's no job, you know. It was hard, especially for paying rent, providing for family, you know.
Charles Tidal, a bassist, was out of work for most of last year. He even got evicted. We caught up with him at the end of June after his first live gig this year.
So Charles, how does it feel to have your first live gig?
Actually, I'm kind of mixed, you know, emotions about it. You know, so the last time they put music back, it was like 3 weeks. So I hope this will be forever. You know.
By the beginning of July, he was feeling a little more comfortable being back on stage.
How do you feel? Are you nervous after being off stage for a while?
Yeah, there's a kind of a stage fright, something like that. But when you start playing, so it's like after a few minutes, like picking it up.
When we caught up with him at the anniversary gig, he was a different person from the one I had first met earlier in the year.
Actually, I've been kind of busy, like I do gigs every day. There's some weeks I have no day off, so yeah, it's all you know, it's picking up. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
While he's cautiously optimistic, he isn't giving up his food delivery job.
From time to time, like I do 1 or 2 shifts. Like after a gig, I do some deliveries, food deliveries. Yeah, I will not leave it. It's like I will still do that job because, you know, just in case, you know, God forbid, it will, you know, it will go away again.
And he's not alone. Other musicians are happy to be back on stage, but they've learned their lesson from 2020.
Yeah, it was really tough. I tried not to look for new work because I always just wanted to keep playing. But then, like, towards the end of 2020, I actually was like, well, I need to find some other way because I don't know when it was going to end. Like, even at that point, you still didn't know when it would end. So I started, like, renting space at a recording studio. So I started doing post-production kind of stuff and, like, all kinds of different things just to make ends meet. Now things are back, so it's better.
Like Charles, Nate and his band have been busy with gigs since live music has returned. Permission for live gigs does come with restrictions, though. Venues have to make sure staff are vaccinated, as well as musicians and guests. And musicians have to wear masks while performing.
We've had a big plastic screen in front of us. We've had to play with the masks on, you know, all kinds of things, and none of them are ideal. None of them help the cause, but we're just happy to play. So, I mean, we'll take it as it comes. You know, we all have to get tested for this show. We all have to get vaccinated, which is fine. You know, I just want to play.
And the fans are excited as well.
And I've been craving live music forever, so it's good to, like, get back into the groove of things.
As for the vaccination requirement,
I think it's really important to be vaccinated, obviously. So if you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated. But yeah, like, it makes you feel safer being somewhere where also the musicians.
I'm so happy to be here because I'm here for Mr. Cool. This is something that we haven't experienced for a long time. So really looking forward to this. I think Hong Kong needs this.
It's not just musicians that are getting back to business. Clubs like this one have been closed for more than half a year, and the cost of reopening isn't cheap.
Just to fix our air conditioning is going to cost us $125,000, right? The bar fridges or the Freon's gone in the bar fridges because they've been turned off. And you say, oh, well, why didn't you leave the electricity on? Well, what's the point of leaving electricity on? Electricity's $10,000 a month for this bar. Even our CCTV had to be repaired, right? Because that was turned off, right? So equipment is designed to be used continuously.
Dave Law, who's lived in Hong Kong all his life, owns this bar in Wan Chai. He says the guidelines during COVID over the last year have cost him $300,000 to $400,000 in lost revenue each month. On top of that, having to comply with the new guidelines has a hefty price tag.
They came up with these air purifiers that we all have. And these air purifiers are $5,000 to $10,000 a piece of equipment. The bar industry sort of said, okay, fine, you want us to put up screens, so we put up screens, that was a cost.
Before live gigs were shut down after a 2-week run last November, Dave had a rock concert planned with 25 bands. Tonight, he's put it back on the calendar.
A lot of bands, the musicians themselves, are not in the bands anymore. So therefore, when we rang up the bands, they said, well, we're missing a drummer, we're missing a guitarist. So we had, in effect, from Tuesday last week, a week to organize the rock concert that's been delayed 7 months.
Dave says having live music adds a lot to their bottom line, especially with no more tourists, business travelers, and convention center trade shows, which brought in lots of traffic.
How big of a draw to your business is live music?
It's massive. It's massive. Is that we have the live music to bring people in. People will stay out late, generally speaking, because they want to see live music. So we're talking about something like 10 times the sales when we have live music than when we don't have live music.
Tonight, he gets a visit from the police, who are just making sure he has the right license to operate. Crisis averted. For now, Dave is hoping they're allowed to continue staying open later and have live gigs. And it seems everyone is operating under this premise.
You gotta do what you gotta do to keep playing music and get your music out there to fans and new audiences and stuff. But, you know, we work with it, we roll the punches, and it is what it is. It's a new normal.
It's only been 4 weeks now, maybe, and clearly, you know, there's like the pressure in the pipe has now been released. There's lots of music events happening, like tonight, like the festival put on a couple of weeks ago.
For any job, like, you just get ready really fast, and you have short promotion periods. You know, cancellation terms are much shorter now. Before COVID, you could cancel in, 48 hours. Now it might be canceled on the day. So, and we're just enjoying it. And like I said to all the musicians, just enjoy it, just work hard. We don't know how long this will last for, unfortunately.
For now, the bands play on.
That's Pearl Magazine for this week. Next week, how those tiny shops at the bottom of stairwells in old buildings are finding ways to survive in tough times. See you then. Bye for now.